Have you ever wanted to go on vacation, like just lock the door, walk away, all of that, just sort of get out of town? Not sort of, but actually get out of town. So this week's episode, we're talking about just this. She is the founder and visionary behind Momcations.co, a travel agency dedicated exclusively to creating unforgettable vacation experiences just for moms. After feeling burnt out and rediscovering herself on a solo trip, Jillian was inspired to help other moms experience the same transformative power of a getaway. With over 17 countries, 4 continents, and 25 U.S. states under her belt, she's combined her love of travel and meticulous planning skills to remove the barriers that often prevent moms from taking the well-deserved breaks they need. She understands that motherhood, while a fulfilling journey, often leaves little room for self-care and personal growth, and she's on a mission to help moms reconnect with their identities outside of their roles as caregivers. Through Momcations.co, she offers curated solo, small group, and large group trips tailored to meet moms' unique desires, whether it's relaxing at a luxury spa, adventuring in Ireland, or making lifelong friends on a group cruise. Passionate about empowering moms to embrace the idea that they're more than just a mom, Jillian has also introduced innovative travel fundraising initiatives like her fundraiser program, which supports schools and organizations while giving participants a vacation experience to remember. I just love speaking with her because this idea of like going on vacation for the longest time in my life felt like the most daunting thing. And going on a solo vacation or a vacation with friends, it was this thing that had so much lead up that it was just tiring to even think about doing. So Jillian is absolutely wonderful. And I just love her approach to like, sometimes you just got to get out of town, totally understanding that getting out of town requires a whole lot of preparation and a whole lot of planning. And so it's not just somebody standing there telling you, hey, you need to go on vacation. It's someone that's helping you get out the door. So I really hope you enjoy the episode, and here is Jillian. Hello, and welcome to the And Both podcast. Here we are going to hear from moms and those in motherhood that are doing the thing that works for them. They are honoring themselves alongside the all-encompassing role and level of expectation that is modern motherhood. And we are going to hear from as many different people as possible in their own experience. So you can find people to relate to. You can hear stories that will make you laugh, make you cry, all of the above, and that we will come together as a community to support one another in a way that is holistic and honoring of the woman and the mother as a whole. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the And Both podcast. My guest today is Jillian McCloskey. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
I'm excited for you to be here. This is a very poignant recording time. The episode will air relatively shortly after, but where I am right now, it is a single digit temperature, and we just had 2 feet of snow in the last couple weeks. So please tell everyone a little bit about you and what you do, because it all comes together in the winter.
Yes. My name is Jillian, and I am the founder of a company called Momcations.co. And at Momcations.co, we specialize in booking vacations specifically for moms. Because even when you take a trip with your family, you're still mom, and you still have to do all the organizing and packing and making sure there's food there that your kids will eat and they get their nap times and everyone's not overstimulated, but stimulated enough that they're not tearing the place apart. You don't actually get a chance to just relax and be you again. So I started this company after taking my first momcation, where I left my husband and kids at home and went to Iceland for 4 days and came back a better mom because I put myself first.
When did you go?
This was almost 8 years ago, and it was actually in January, which you would have thought if we were in cold temperature going away somewhere cold. But I wanted to go. I was on trying to see the Northern Lights, and I wanted to see Iceland specifically for the cold. I'm also a cold weather lover personally. And me and my best friend went for 4 days. We hiked the ice tunnels. We did the lava tunnels. We went to all of the places to see. And then we ended the trip with a day at the Blue Lagoon and having the relaxing part. But it was the best 4 days because we got to do what we wanted, eat what we wanted. If we wanted to take a nap, we could. When we were on the buses and you were on there for 4 hours, you weren't worried about kids being entertained or needing potty breaks. We just sat there and read our books or napped on the bus and only was worried about what we wanted as humans, not having to worry about everyone else, which is the 24/7 job of being a mom.
Yes.
Yeah, we're always on. And one of the things we took away from that trip was both me and my friend said, we need to make this a priority to do it yearly. And we have stuck to that. And it's one of the best things we could have done for ourselves, just as women, but also as mothers.
I love that. I love that. I think there's always a pile of things happening in our lives, right? And there's always like, it's kind of one of those like, there's never a great time, but is there kind of
Oh,
an
no.
okay time?
Well, that's what
Um,
one of the things that I always say, because everyone always got to me like, how do you find time to do this? And I'm like, I don't find time. I make time. I'm like, and you're also looking at
mhm.
me 8 years later when I found my rhythm that works for me as well, where I sit when the kids' calendar comes out for school and I see their breaks and other people are planning family vacations. I'm seeing when I can fit in my 4 days away. And I pick based off of, I'm not going to pick when they're in the height of a sports season or when I know the play is going to be going on because my one daughter always does the school play. I try to pick a time that is a random time, like January, when there's always not a lot of things going on. And it's also frigid and you want to get away from the weather, but you pick a time that kind of works for you. And I put it in my calendar almost a year in advance so that one, I have something to look forward to. But two, if you don't put it in the calendar, it's never going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Someday is always down the road, right? Like you
Oh,
never get to someday.
100%.
Yeah. And then, so you started this 8 years ago and you said your daughters are 12 and
Now they're 12 and 13. Well, almost 12. She has a birthday coming up shortly. But like my first trip I took, they were 4 and 5. And I was in the thick of it with full-time work, kids, all their activities, sicknesses, because at that age, they just share every germ. I was also on the PTA board. I was also on the Girl Scouts. I was also on multiple boards in my town's community. So I was burnt out from every direction. And I kept just looking online or reading blogs or signing up for courses on trying to find new hacks to try to make mom life easier. And the biggest problem was is that I was exhausted. And I wasn't just exhausted physically. I was exhausted mentally and emotionally. And I just needed some time to just chill out again.
yeah. I mean, you are preaching to the choir. It's like, it's January. We had the flu run through our house. I feel like this year, everyone is so sick and so consistently sick.
Yes, I agree. It is like the virus has just doubled down this year, saying, here we go, get ready for it.
Yeah. And like, we've had flu and we've had, fevers and all of
Hmm.
these things. And like, so when I was reading, about Momcations, and I thought this would be the time of year that
Oh,
someone would be like, you know what, let's just whatever. And
well, like I was saying, I had a friend of mine who messaged me this morning and she's like, do you know of any travel deals going out in the next couple of days, maybe this weekend or next weekend? She goes, I just got puked on again by my child and I need to get away. And I'm like, I got you, sis. Hold on a second. And I texted her
yeah.
3 different ones, one that goes this weekend, one that goes next weekend, and one that goes the following weekend. And she's like, I am calling my husband now. It's his turn. I'm like, that's it. It's like a game of tag. You're it. I need a break.
Mhm. Why is it always that, like, when they get to that point, like, I don't mind, like, fevers, nobody likes fevers and runny noses and stuff like that. It's like par for the course. Like, someone throws up and I'm like, time to move. Like,
So funny
great
enough,
job, everyone. Like, let's pack it up or actually don't even pack it. Just walk out the door and close the door.
my one daughter was sick with flu B 2 weeks ago, and she threw up, and the entire bathroom was covered. And I literally just sat there and I was like, I'm ready to burn the house to the ground
Yeah.
rather than have to clean this up. And then it was also 2 o'clock in the morning, which just
Oh,
added to it.
yeah.
And I sat there and was like, that's it. We just need to move that, like, or just burn the house down. Like, we're done. This will never be clean.
And that's like, it's 2 o'clock in the morning or it's like 5 o'clock when, you've run around like a mad person trying to like pick people up and get things sorted and all this stuff. And all of a sudden someone just like explodes on the carpet and you're like a time stops. And I know every mom out there has had this where time stops and you're like, all of these things that are swirling in your head, all the spinning plates, it's like all the plates hit the ground. You're like, you know what? Cancel. Yep, we cancel this day. We cancel these plans. Everything is canceled. Life is canceled. And like, we're all done. And I just love that, like, people will people will have this like, oh, everything is canceled. I heard about this momcations thing. And I am going to go that way because it's true. You have to leave the space in order to actually get a break.
Well, that's it. Because like for years, I was doing all of the suggestions that you saw, especially over the last 10 years on social media and blogs and Pinterest of self-care this, and you should take a bath and give yourself an hour of relaxation. But every mom knows the second you sit your rear end down on a sofa to try to take 5 minutes to yourself, everyone comes to you. Even the dog comes to you with their problems. And you don't actually get to have a minute. And then, like, God bless him, I love my husband. And when the girls were little, he'd be like, you know what? You sleep in this morning and I'll get the kids ready. And I'd be like, really? And then it would be him coming up, where's this? And I'd be like, same place it always is. And then a couple minutes later, a kid coming up, Dad's brushing my hair wrong. Can you brush it? And then the next minute, I hear everyone's downstairs and I can't hear exactly what's getting yelled between all the people, but it's loud enough that I'm like, okay, I have not gotten one extra minute of sleep. And now my anxiety is at a level 10. So this just defeated the purpose.
And I love when you're like, well, that was a great idea. However, it's not, it's like things don't sound right. Like that's exactly it, right? Like my house doesn't sound right. I know the order of events. I have to like, because you're in that space.
Yep.
It's, you can't stop. Do your trips, is it always like flight or is there options to drive?
No. Oh, no. So like I said, I'm seasoned at this now. So I've also learned what works for me, and everyone's different. So I take a trip with other moms once a year. And then I also take a solo trip 100% by myself, which is also fantastic. And some are flight, some have been trains, and some I have driven to. And a lot of it has to do with where you're located, what's around you, your budget. Like a lot of times people don't realize that flying somewhere internationally for 3 days can actually be cheaper than driving to a resort 2 hours away. And
yeah, depending where you live.
exactly. There are so many different options. And it also goes based off of what you like to do. I personally am not a huge beach person. I can sit at a beach for maybe a day and then I'm bored. I need something to do. So I also like ones where I can either go hiking or they have a lot of things like yoga or activities at the resorts. But that's if I'm also going by myself. If you're going with a couple of girlfriends or even just one friend and you're just wanting to also just hang out as moms and friends, it also changes things. I've also gone to one of those glamping campgrounds where we stayed in yurts. It was one of the coolest things ever because we also got to like be kids again because they had all the
Yeah.
board games and you got to cook all of your food over the fire. And it was just sitting around the campfire reading your books or talking. It was wonderful. But there's so many different options.
Yeah, I like that because I think that, somebody listening to this episode, it's like, well, I can't go to Iceland for 4 days because, either budget, childcare, work, all that stuff. Because, because I always think back to, I worked with a therapist when I worked in the hospital, and they were like, there's really no point in me having a vacation, like a block of vacation time, because literally I don't get a vacation. I have to use my vacation time to cover all my children's illnesses.
Correct. That's
And
also a hard
so,
one to work around.
exactly. So it was like, vacation is really like wonderful sounding. However, I can never actually get to that end. So the fact that there is something that, it's really that interruption in routine
Mm-hmm.
that you need more than like, I mean, I would love to go on like a 4-day trip to like England or, whatever,
Yeah.
some place like totally out, but having that ability to like maybe even work up to that
Yeah.
if you're a mom with really little kids, like I think that's really
And
awesome for people to get into it.
there is always different options for both the time off of work and home time. Like, granted, if you've got a newborn, you're not going anywhere. Even under the age of 1, it gets a little harder to leave, especially if you're breastfeeding or anything like that. But as your kids get to the toddler and then like 4 and 5, it does get a little easier. Then you start getting into the school age where there's school time, activities, everything else. There's always going to be some form of a roadblock in your way to finding time to take a momcation. The thing you need to do is make it a priority to put yourself first for once. So, like I said, when I use the calendar to figure out what works for me, I also get to set my work schedule so I know I can work around it. And I also can work when I'm away. Like this last year, I went to Peru for 9 days. It also took me 8 years to work up to that trip.
Yeah.
But I also, when I was on train transfers and plane transfers and stuff like that, I was working on things I needed to do for my business while I was doing that. Not everyone can do that, like people who work in the healthcare industry. My friend who went along with me is in healthcare. And we planned our trip around, we used the calendar off of what days she was going to have off because of like national holidays and stuff like that. So we worked it so that we knew she was going to have this day and this day off for work because of a holiday. And then this day and this day because of her weekend. And if she changed her shift and worked
Mhm.
10 in a row here and 10 in a row here, then she got her 9 days with only having to use one extra vacation day. And it's
Smart.
some people, but that also took us 9 or 8 years to work up to that point. The first time we did it and the first couple of times we worked with saying, oh, the kids are technically going to be off this weekend because of President's Day or whatever holiday is coming up. Rather than do something with our family, we're going to have our husbands take over the kids that weekend, and we'll use those 4 days as our 4 days away. Another thing we do is, even though certain flights are really crappy times, we will take them to get longer at our destination because of time off. So like we were going away the one time and the flight was leaving at 10 p.m. and you weren't getting in till 2 a.m. Okay, everyone else is like, oh, I'm not going to do that. And we're like, nope, we can get the whole day done at work. We can have dinner. We can get the kids to bed and then get on a flight. Hopefully we'll sleep on the flight. If not, we're used to always being tired because we're moms. And then
Right.
exactly. And then we woke up in our destination able to enjoy the day.
That's cool. I do really love the acknowledgement of, building up to it, because I think that a lot of what happens in this is that, like, when you think about, a 0 to 1 mom, like 0 kids to 1 kid mom, like that is a huge jump. I say for sure over and over again, 0 to 1 was the hardest adjustment for me because
Agree.
everything changes,
Yeah.
right? And so when you talk about like that jump, like that's the most, for me, that was the most shocking. And it was that idea of like, oh my gosh, it would be so nice to be able to like be back in the space where I feel like myself. However, I couldn't do that at that time, like between work and between all of those things. And that's what I think is a really important message that you're putting out there, is that it doesn't have to be, there's no right way to get away. It just has, and even if it's like 2 days,
Yeah.
it's just setting it up so that
And that's
people
it.
will
Like,
go.
I had two women that reached out to me a little while ago and they wanted to get away. And they're like, we don't have a lot of time. We don't have a lot of funds. What can you give us as a suggestion? And I was like, okay, well, if you can go during the week rather than the weekend, that makes a price difference there. But it was like, even if you plan it out right, you can get the most time as humanly possible for your quote downtime. So what they ended up selecting is they're flying out on a Wednesday. They're doing the late night flight on a Wednesday so that they can still be home, everything else for their family and kids and husbands. They're getting to the resort late Wednesday night, early Thursday morning, but it means that they can then sleep at the resort, wake up Thursday morning, have all day Thursday, all day Friday, Saturday morning, and then fly home and be home by Saturday evening. So even though they're technically gone 4 days, they're really only gone 2 full days.
Hmm.
And it's enough that they have 48 hours of completely shutting off at the resort, plus your little bookends on each side. And then they're still able to get home and then still have a full day at home to get themselves prepared before the week starts on Monday.
How do you, like, so do you source the flights and the hotels and all that? Like, how does that all work?
So, because I am a registered travel agent, I have booking platforms that we can look at different resorts, flights, cruises, tours. There's so many different options, trains, even car rentals. I mean, it's all in there. And the difference is that where a regular standard travel agent is only looking at like the big package places or the family getaways or that kind of idea, I'm looking at the list that comes through every day from the eyes of a mom that just needs a little bit of time away.
I like it. I think that's really cool. That was, having somebody, it's like having somebody in your back pocket that, like, when you reach out for help, that person is there.
And it's true. Like they always say, it takes a village and motherhood takes a village. And where you might call one friend where you need help with something, or you call another friend that might know more about medicine or different kind of things. If you're meeting a friend that's like, hey, I need a vacation, I'm your friend.
Mm. What did you do before you started this?
I have, crazy enough, I have been in construction sales for 25 years
What?
and I only work with men. But funny enough is because I've worked with men for so long and everything for years, I have told them, you need to do this for your wife. You need to do this. You need to do that. And every one of them are like, thank you. I'm like, I try to help them out as much as possible as well.
That's awesome. Like, slide the paper across the
Yeah.
desk, like, here you go. This is gonna help your situation out.
Funny enough, back in my early 20s, I actually had some of the men that I worked with would come to me and ask me to do their Christmas shopping for them because
Oh
they're
God.
like, I don't know what to get. And the last suggestion you made was perfect. And can you help me out? And I did it. And he's like, you could make a fortune just Christmas shopping for men for every year.
Yeah, like, or you could listen to your wife.
I
I
mean,
mean,
crazy thoughts.
it's a wild idea. You could ask questions and listen for the response. I don't know.
Wow.
I don't know. Call me nuts over here. Oh my gosh. So 9 days. So you start 4 days and now 9 days in Peru. How does the conversation around these trips go with your girls?
Well, the first one that I took, I planned out everything. So I had every outfit laid out for my girls before I went away. I had dinners prepped and in the fridge with Post-it notes on how to heat them up. I had spreadsheets of what needed done on what day, what activity, all the stuff there. I came home and not one of those meals had been eaten. They didn't go to any of no, I'm lying. My one daughter went to her ballet class, and my husband, like the tears with getting her dressed in her tights and her leotard and getting her hair up in a bun because I nearly shaved our daughter's head off. Like, I'm never doing that again. But I sat there and I was like, I did all of this prepping and he didn't do anything. He didn't, but the girls were like, at first, before I left, they were worried that they were going to starve to death. They're like, what are we going to do for food? And I'm like, I've left dinners, I've left meals, but worst case, there's a box of Cheerios in the pantry. You will survive. It'll be okay.
Yeah.
My husband ended up getting takeout the entire time I was gone. My kids thought it was a party the entire time I was gone. But over the years, we have gotten better. And like I said, it's something that you work up to for certain things, where now we are a very well-oiled machine in our household as well. My girls are also that little bit older now and pretty self-sufficient and also helpful in things like the kitchen, or they know their activities and they know stuff where we're at the stage where we're more or less just Uber drivers and sometimes they're friends is how we are. So it has gotten easier. The first couple times that I took a momcation, my husband called a lot. And the whole time I kept going, you do live in the same house as me. You have been there. You have done, like, you've witnessed me do these things. But it's kind of like when mom's away, the whole foundation crumbles. So that was the first couple of times with like that. And then even my girls calling because they wanted to talk to me or they missed me and they FaceTimed me and all that kind of stuff. Now we are at the point where when I take my momcation, unless it is an emergency, do not call me. Do not call me for anything. I will send you 2 proof of life text messages so you know I'm still alive. And other than that, do not contact me. So even when I was in Peru last year, and I sent a text message when I landed in Peru with my selfie for them, saying, I have gotten here and I'm fine. And on day 4, I sent them another proof of life message from the top of one of the mountains. And it was fantastic. On day 6, I got a text message from my husband saying, sorry to bother you. Charlotte broke her braces off and I don't know which orthodontist is hers. Please tell me which one. I sent him the contact card and said, go with God. And after
go with God, pack it in wax.
Yep, exactly. And so he ended up, but that also, like I said, it took years to build up to that because the first year I was away, I got phone calls of where's the children's ibuprofen in the same spot it's been in our house since they were infants.
I think that that's a really important thing too, is that, if you are a mom who is like, I am going to go away on a vacation, I am going to get out of the house, and you do that lead up process, whatever that looks like. It may be like walk out the door, close, and close it behind you, or it may be a full front to back prep of everything. But that first trip when people are calling you and everything is, like you can't quite necessarily get that full shut off. I feel like that's when people just sort of determine that I'll just go later. I'll just do it another time because right now it's too hard and all that stuff. But the key is if you keep trying, not to like, maybe you stay close next year, but that you're still away, you have to get out of the space before people can learn. Like it's yeah. I mean, I think it's anyone's kids, right? Like my kids don't even leave their room. Like they can't find something in there, and I hear like "Mom," and I'm like, "I am downstairs." Like the rule in my house has just become you have to be looking at the person you're talking to
Mm-hmm.
because it's like this giant game of telephone of like multiple people, and I'm like, "What are we looking for here?" And they're like, "I can't find my hairbrush." I'm like, "Well, there's 6 of them in
Funny
the
enough,
bathroom."
we had this conversation this morning with my oldest daughter over hair ties. Now, we are a
Well,
house with 3 females in it, all with long hair. My
yeah.
oldest has curly hair. She has got a mane of hair on her. And she comes walking down the stairs this morning, and it is just in every single direction. And I said, Charlotte, you need to tame that shit. Sorry. And I'm like, you need to get it under control. Go pull your hair up in a hair tie if you don't want to actually take care of wetting your curls and setting them. And she's like, there is not a hair tie in this house. I said, I am calling. Well, I'm like, there is. I'm like, I have bought 2 different 20 packs and stashed them throughout the entire house. You can open numerous drawers in this house and find a hair tie. She goes, well, I was in the bathroom and I looked on top of the counter and there was none in that container. So we're out of hair ties. I'm like, no, there are literally hair ties stashed in every room of this house. Get to it.
Mhm. And your backpack and
Oh, yeah.
my bag and everything. Yeah. But I think like, that it's so helpful because when, you can look at it both ways, right? You could look at like your kid is there at home and they've encountered some struggle.
Mhm.
Maybe it's they can't find something or maybe they got hurt or something like that. And they're like, where is my mom? I want my mom, right? You can look at that both ways. You can look at it as like, oh my gosh, I must be there for all of these moments and I have to like be at the ready, right? Like
Yeah.
the Grenadier Guards outside of Buckingham Palace. Like I'm here just waiting for someone to like
Mhm.
give me something to do. Or you say, all right, so that was not a successful first round of me going away in terms of like how all the pieces come together. But you guys all are alive at the end of this experience.
Mhm.
And I'm going to continue to go and do this. So it's up to you guys to figure out how you are going to be successful at this because I won't be here because I will be away.
So, funny enough, a couple of things came to me when you were saying that. My mother-in-law, who has passed away in recent years, when I was pregnant with my oldest, I was terrified about being a mom and messing up and everything else. And I asked her, now my husband's one of 7. And I asked her, I was like, how did you do it? How did you take care of them? How did you know you were doing right? And she's like, in all honesty, if at the end of the day, I counted to 7 and they were all still breathing, that day was a win. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, and that kind of like always stuck in me, like that kind of like sat in the back of my brain for years. Like, okay, some days we have good days and some days we have bad days and some days the whole ship just falls apart. But at the end of the day, if I count to 2 and they're both still breathing, I've technically won.
Yeah, I mean, you get to tomorrow. My kids, because there's 4 of them, I would get in the car and like when we were doing like, buckles and all of that stuff, I'd get in the car. And then that was easy. I never had 4 in because of COVID. I never had 4 that I had to buckle all 4 in at once.
Mhm.
But, then the bigger kids were in the back row. And so it was always checking to make sure that they had buckled themselves. And so they're all numbered. There's 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
But it was just in the car, like, is 1 here, is 2 here, whatever. And they're like, Mom, I'm not a number. But I'll tell you what, there's a lot of people that are like, well, that's just like not like kind. Like they have a name and they're a person, all that stuff. I'm like, if I holler 2 on the playground, number 2 comes running. And
Yep.
people are like, who is 2? I'm like, that's because they like space out every other name or whatever. But It always makes me laugh because it's always people that have like, 3, 4 plus kids where you're like, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Mhm. It's exactly. And it is like, and I've got family members that have multiples, like 5 or more. I've got friends of mine that have 5 or more. And she's like, oh, you learn to do things to make it work. And she goes, and it's funny how parents of singles or only 2, they don't think the same way we do as other moms. But it also, like you were saying with your kids and the olders buckling themselves and teaching them to do things for themselves. One of the other reasons I really started this was because of an interview I heard years ago, and my girls were still little at the time. And I don't remember who it was, but the woman turned around and she's like, motherhood is the only job that if you do right, you are not needed at the end.
Mhm.
They want you around if you've done it right, but they don't need you around. And I was like, you know what? That really is true. Like, our whole point of motherhood isn't just to be there to do everything for them, it is to teach them to be fully functioning adults.
Mhm.
So, taking a momcation and taking a break is actually helping your kids to see, oh, I can do this on my own.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's true. I mean, that's the thing, right? Like when you look at like infants, 100% dependent, and then they've got to go out into the world.
Hmm.
You've got to get to that point. There's another quote I just came to mind and I cannot remember who said it either. But it was that you have 18 years to raise your kids. This is not the 18 summers quote because I hate that one. That's just like that's oppressive. But you raise your children and your like report card on how well you did raising your children is your relationship with them when they're adults.
Correct.
It's like if you are in it and you are doing it and things are, you're a lot of the stuff that people talk about now, right? Like effective communication and
Mhm.
compromise and boundaries and expectations and all of this stuff. We're all trying to figure it out. Everyone's different. Every kid is different. The relationship that results from that when your kids don't rely on you for food and shelter and entertainment and all that stuff is directly related to those early years or those first 18.
And it's also interesting to see now, I'm pretty close with my mother. My mother was also young when she had me, and I was raised in the 80s, and that was a totally different style of parent. So it's crazy to see when my daughters will do something, and my mother will look at me and she's like, you would have never done this. Like, for example, my daughter came home the other day from school and she was just an anxious ball of mess. And she looked at me and she dropped her backpack and she looked at me and she goes, I need you to hug me right now and give me reassurance. I've had a crap day. And I'm like, okay. And I went right up and I gave her a hug. And now let me also preface this with my daughter has very bad anxiety and OCD. And we've gone through years of therapy for her and me as a parent. And I personally have also gone through therapy. I'm a very pro therapy person.
Oh, bring it all in
So
by the truckload.
exactly. I think everyone needs a therapist, but that's a whole nother platform we'll talk on. So, but she came in, she asked me that, and she needed the comfort of the feel of the hug to help her regulate, but also that reassurance because I am her person. And at that time, she didn't have it in her toolkit to talk herself off the ledge, and she just needed a reset. So I'm standing in my kitchen, bear hugging my daughter and still continuing a conversation with my mother. And afterwards, she let go and she's like, okay, I'm good. I'm going to go get changed because she wears a uniform. She's like, I'm going to go get changed into my clothes. I'm like, okay. And my mother looked at me and she goes, you never would have done that. You would have came home and sulked upstairs. And maybe 2 days later, after being bitchy, you would have told me something. But that's it. And I was like, oh, I know. But the whole point of life is each generation needs to learn better, do better. I'm like, and not that I'm saying you were wrong, but I know what I needed. And I've learned that through therapy. And
Mhm.
now I am teaching my children the same thing. Hence, also another reason why I do my momcations. And I said this years ago, if or when my daughters decide they want to have a family, have children, whatever form, or get married, whatever they decide to do, I want them to also know it is okay to put yourself as a priority, that
Mhm.
they don't follow in this mom burnout, mom guilt, put everyone first. It is okay to step back once in a while and say, you know what? I need to take a couple days for myself.
Yeah. I am really optimistic that given and I actually wouldn't have been optimistic had we not had a pandemic, but I think that like everything got so impossibly hard
Oh, yeah.
and so unreasonably overwhelming that had we not had that experience, I feel like it would be multiple generations away
Yeah.
from people taking inventory of how do I want to feel? How do I want my house to feel? How do I want my kids to feel? Because I just felt like somebody stood on my throat for 2 years
Yeah.
during COVID and was like, smile and get up and do more. And I think that, not, I hate the term silver lining, but to find the lesson and the growth in that is to say, this is how impossibly hard things can be. And in that same vein, I don't ever want to be there again, but I want to take what I experienced from that and go forward and do stuff like momcation. Like, remember, no one could go anywhere. You couldn't
Oh, yeah.
fly, couldn't, it was just nothing. And part of that is probably good, right? Being in your house for a little while is great. Being in your house
And
for a long
some
while.
ways, and that's the thing, like, because the whole thing of, oh, take a break as a mom and do things around your house or read a book or this, that, and the other, which a lot of times, yeah, you can do that. But then a lot of times you sit there on the sofa and you're like, oh, I'm going to read this book or I'm going to watch this show. And then you start feeling guilty and you're like, oh, but I should be doing this, or I should be organizing my pantry right now. I should be getting this to-do list thing done that has been on my list for 10 years and I just keep ignoring. And that's like sometimes you can do some of it at home, but to actually shut off, you need to leave the house.
Yeah. You have to leave the house to get rid of the should
Yeah.
because you are never going to run out of stuff to do. And even if it's stuff that you have to do to like function,
Yeah.
like clean out the pantry, clean out the fridge, all of that stuff so people don't get sick. And you have that's always going to be there. If
Oh,
you
yeah.
are out of the house, like I don't think anyone goes on vacation. They're like, I should really spruce the place up. Like, nope,
Nope.
no, thank you.
You're at the point where I've been on vacation once and something happened at the resort and they're like, oh, we don't have such and such available. And I'm like, oh, that's okay. Don't worry about it. And she goes, thank you for being so understanding. I'm like, listen, honey, I am 48 hours away from my job, my family, or any responsibilities. As long as there's not a plague or a fire going on, I'm good.
Yeah, right? Like if there's no water pouring into my hotel room, nothing's on fire, and yeah, like you're never going to catch me on a cruise. I cannot. The viruses and the stuff that goes around on
So,
that.
funny enough, I went on a
Oof.
cruise 20 some years ago, like in my early 20s. And in your early 20s, going on a cruise is a completely different experience than going on a cruise in your 40s. I went on a cruise last year as my momcation with a friend of mine. And I was nervous about the whole thing with the whole viruses and people getting locked down and everything else. But we went on just a short little 4-day cruise. And it was fantastic having everything right there. Like
Mhm.
it was the convenience of it and the options was wonderful without feeling like overly resorty. And then we got to stop at a couple of different places. And I was surprised. I was like, I didn't think I was going to like this, but I really did enjoy it.
Yeah, I know. That is one of those things. Like my kids, they see the commercial for like the Disney cruise, and they're like, "Mom," and I'm like, "Oh, Nora, oh,
And
I
I
cannot."
actually, I brought that up we are a traveling family. We travel in general a lot. One, also because most of our family is in Europe. So we've always had to travel. But once my kids got old enough that they knew about Santa, then we did the let's go away. We also did since they were little, we don't do birthday parties. We go away on a family trip for that weekend. My two daughters' birthdays, one always falls right around Easter. My other daughter always falls around the October break from school.
Mm.
So we always take like a 4-day trip just as the family. So we've been big travelers. And I brought up about a Disney cruise this last year. And I was like, hey, how about for Christmas this year? We actually go on one of the Disney cruises for 5 days. There's one that actually leaves the day after Christmas. And my one daughter's like, yeah, that sounds amazing. And my other daughter looked at me, she goes, that is way too many humans in one area. I cannot do it.
Yes, I am picking up what you're putting down there.
I was like, okay, I guess that's off the bucket list.
But people love them.
Oh, I know.
Like people, and there's people there's all these stories and reports coming out about like people that are selling their houses and living on cruise ships.
I've seen that. Now,
I get it.
I always have saved the around the world cruise that's like a year long. But it's also, I've saved that one because it stops in so many places that you're like, this is fantastic. I can see so many places on my travel list and have the same base every single night. It sounds fantastic. And my husband's like, there is no way you are putting me on a cruise ship for an entire year. It is not happening.
I feel like it's like when you go out to space, and they do like all the things where they're like, oh, your bone density is now junk. And like, or it's like Wall-E. They're like, go on this year-long cruise. And you're like, we don't walk anymore. A year on a cruise ship.
Yeah.
That would be intense.
I know, but it was impressive. It was a full year and you end up hitting 127 ports and it circumnavigates the entire globe. And like certain spots, you only have like 1 day in, but other spots you have like 2 or 3 days in so that you can really look around where you're at. And I'm like, that is fantastic. Because if you tried to hit all those places in the world between flights and airports and hotels and food, it would be ridiculous.
Yeah. That's a cool idea.
It is.
Yeah.
Don't know if I'll ever get on it, but
you're at 9 days, and so you have a few years to work yourself up to 365.
Well, funny enough, I've been planning my 50th birthday trip for about 10 years. And for my 50th birthday, I want to go to Antarctica. And it's like a 3-week total trip between flight down, acclimating, then on the boat, coming back, everything. And it's also quite expensive. So that I knew back when I said this is what I wanted to do, I've been putting money away every week for years so that when it comes to my 50th, I can afford this. And my husband turned around to me one day and he goes, I don't want to go to Antarctica. I don't like the cold. And I was like, that's okay. You're not invited. This is my trip. Like, I didn't invite you to come along. I'm either going by myself or one of my friends who I travel with a lot. She will want to go with me and she's also saving money. And he's like, then you're going to leave me home alone with the kids for 3 weeks to take care of everything. And you're just going to abandon us. And I turned around to him. I was like, hun, when I turn 50, the girls will be 21 and 22. I hope for damn hell that they are self-sufficient enough, and you are, to handle 3 weeks without me. And it finally registered on him that the kids were not going to stay little forever. And he was like panicking. And then he's like, oh my God, our girls are going to get older. I don't like this idea. And then it just turned
like, you want them for 3 weeks. Yeah. Now you want them to be there. Oh my gosh.
I was like, oh my God. But yeah, so I'm like, but that's one of those ones I plan way ahead for something like that.
Yeah, I love that. I love the like short-term, long-term. plans, because you don't want to start with a trip that's like circumnavigating the earth on a
No,
cruise ship.
can't
You
handle
gotta,
that.
no. Oh my gosh. Well, I think that I think that is such a cool idea, and it's such a really great way to help people sort of think about, because when you are in the trenches of stuff, and you're your head down and everything that you're doing, it's hard to think like, oh, is it possible for me to actually go and do this, and what would that even look like? So I'd love for you to tell everyone where they can find more information or find out about you.
Well, I am on Instagram, is the social that I have selected as the easiest for me to handle. I am also on my website at momcation.co. It's got a lot of information there, and it has a couple of trips up there, but also just if you want to reach out and go from there. And then it also has where you can sign up for my newsletter, where I give some mom tips and tricks and that, and then also travel deals.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.